At this time of year, you'll see lots of talk on social media about so-called predicted papers. Many students go out and buy these papers with the hope that it's going to be a very quick and easy way to improve their grades. It's only when they actually receive what they've paid for, though, that many end up disappointed. Personally, I don't think you should spend even 1 penny of your money on these papers, and I'll explain why in this video. I appreciate that some of you may find this quite a controversial view, and you're welcome to let me know in the comments if you disagree. Let's first of all begin by talking about the hook. A hook is something used by these companies or individuals to get your attention. They rely solely on one important fact, the fact that you want to do well. Everybody wants to pass their exams and get the best grades possible. So the idea that you could do this quite easily by paying a little bit of money sounds very appealing. Especially when you consider the fact that many people spend hundreds, even thousands of pounds on private tutors to try and improve their grade. So a few pounds for a predicted paper sounds quite good value. Of course, if something sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. Let's have a look at some of the red flags that I'd urge you to watch out for when looking at these predicted papers. The first of those red flags is false promises, or as I like to call them, lies. This week I came across a website selling predicted papers, and it said something along these lines. Some questions on my papers will be exactly the same as the exam. And the word exactly is in capital letters. Unfortunately, there's nobody that's able to make this claim apart from the people that wrote the papers. And of course, if they were writing predicted papers, I think we'd have a pretty big problem on our hands. To suggest that they'll be exactly the same is frankly ridiculous, and it's just designed to get you to hand over your money. Last year I saw a comment on Facebook by a company selling predicted papers. It read like this: "Our predicted papers are designed to give you a good estimate for the topics that will come up this year specifically." This comment was actually directed at parents rather than students, perhaps with the idea that parents may not quite understand how exams are written. To make a claim that there are specific topics that will come up this year and their predicted papers somehow know about this is just a lie. Once again, designed to get people to hand over their money. In fact, when I write my practice papers, I do the exact opposite of these two claims. At the front of my papers, you'll find a disclaimer. The disclaimer tells you that the topics from my paper may well be in the real exams, however, there's absolutely no guarantee of this for the previously mentioned reasons. Some topics may appear, and some may not. And then I go on to advise you to actually just revise all topics, rather than relying on my paper. So where would you place your trust? With the companies that are selling you papers telling you that they're going to be exactly the same as the real thing, or the person that gives you them for free that advises you to be wary? The second red flag I want to talk about is the use of persuasive language. The companies and individuals will select their words carefully to make you believe that you're going to buy something that's going to make a real difference. Watch out for phrases like careful analysis of past trends. Now, I'm not saying that analysing past trends is a bad thing to do. The problem occurs when they use this statement, but there's no data or analysis to actually back it up. It's quite an easy statement to make you believe that they've done some careful planning here. And if you actually want to look at analysis of past trends, it's all available on my website for free anyway. It might even be that this is the data that they've used. Other phrases to watch out for are things like experts or senior examiners. Now, it might well be that some of the people writing these papers are experts, or indeed senior examiners, but that doesn't give them any advantage on being able to predict the types of questions that are going to be in your paper. These words and phrases have been selected to give you the impression that the person who wrote the papers knows exactly what they're talking about. The next red flag that I'd be looking out for is the use of discounts, especially time-dependent ones. So you may see things on social media or websites that say something like 20% off all papers, but this week only. You may want to go back and check next week when you realise it's actually even more off. It's a very common sales tactic to price your items very high and then reduce them by a percentage to give the impression that they're in a discount, when actually they're charging you the price they intended to anyway. And in terms of hooks, there's one more thing that I would be looking out for, and that is a lack of samples. When selling a written product online, for example revision guides or books, it's common for good companies to give you a sample so you can see exactly what it's going to look like. So for instance, being able to see the first few questions will at least give you a fair view of what you're going to purchase. Some companies won't do this deliberately because they know what you're going to buy isn't actually that good, and you'll only realise this once you've paid your money. Now I want to talk about the actual quality of the papers being sold, and this varies massively. Some of the ones I've seen do actually look quite good, but they've still got these false promises attached to get you to buy them. The best piece of advice I could give you in terms of the quality is to talk to people in the years above you. If they used predicted papers last year, they'll give you some honest and free advice because they've got nothing to lose or gain. In terms of the papers produced, there are still some red flags though that I would like to point out. The first of those is when all 3 papers are already written, and this is a math-specific one. Some companies will sell you a bundle of papers 1, 2, and 3, and they've already been written today in January. Unfortunately for maths, this makes absolutely no sense. Almost all of the topics from the GCSE Maths course could come up in any of the 3 papers. So to try and decide which topics are going to come up in each of the papers now is quite frankly stupid. A simple example would be frequency polygons from last year's Edexcel Higher paper. I saw a predicted paper that had this in paper 2, yet it came up in paper 1. If it came up in paper 1, there's almost no chance it's going to appear again in paper 2 and 3. So if you use this predicted paper to revise for paper 2, you'd be revising a topic that you don't need to revise anymore. A much better idea would be to wait until you've seen paper 1, and then write paper 2 based on the topics that came up. And then when you've seen both papers 1 and 2, write paper 3. This of course takes a lot more time and effort, so the companies and individuals selling these papers don't want to do that. They just want you to buy all 3 of them now and hope that they vaguely resemble the real thing. The next red flag to watch out for is when companies or individuals make the claim that their papers are suitable for all exam boards. So it may say something on the front like suitable for Edexcel, AQA, and OCR. Now I can only really speak for maths here, but I would assume it would be fairly similar across other subjects, especially science. But exam boards are very different. They ask questions in a different way, they present them in a different way, and in fact some topics are in some exam boards and not others. For instance, you won't find the topics of capture-recapture or stem and leaf diagrams in an AQA paper. So if you're doing a paper that's got these in it, because it's suitable for all exam boards, you're revising things you don't need to do. What they really ought to do is write a different set of papers for each exam board. But once again, we come back to that point of effort. They don't want to do that because it's harder and takes more time. They would rather you just believe that it's suitable for all of them and hand over your money. And the final red flag to watch out for here is when you have no information about who actually wrote the papers. If you think about it, there's nothing actually stopping you from writing a predicted paper. If you're a GCSE student, you know roughly the types of topics that come up, you can find information from my website and quickly put together your own paper and start to sell it. Unless you really know who's behind these papers, you should have an element of caution. Now let's look at some facts. The best people to guide and advise you on your way to your exams are your teachers. They know you better than some random person on the internet. Yesterday I asked my followers on Twitter, who are mostly teachers, what they thought about paid-for predicted papers, and they said that they're a waste of money. And here are the results to back it up. 86.4% of the people that responded to my poll said they're a waste of money. 12.9% said it's up to the student, it's their money, and 0.7% of people responding to the poll said that they're excellent and they would encourage people to buy them. Just to be clear, this was 3 people out of 425 who voted for this, and they're probably people that actually sell their own papers and only follow me to get information. The next fact that is so important to remember, and is the basis for most of the points in this video, is that nobody can predict the papers accurately. No matter what anyone says about the analysis they've done or their significant experience teaching, providing tuition, nobody can predict what's in those papers, and that includes myself. In 2022, we were even told all of the topics that were going to come up in each paper. Even with this information, most people's attempts at predicted papers were still really bad. Another thing to bear in mind is there are completely free resources elsewhere on the internet that do as good, if not a better job than these paid-for predicted papers. I'll share a few of these with you in a moment. The final and perhaps most important fact is that predicted papers are simply not essential. There are many students who would have smashed their exams last year who didn't use a predicted paper at all. All you really need to do is work hard, listen to your teachers, and practice using the real past papers set by exam boards, which of course are completely free. So where else can you go for completely free resources? Well, first of all, you can go to my website. Now it might seem a bit silly to recommend myself, but I know the hundreds of hours of work and preparation that goes into my resources. I think they're pretty good, and they're completely free. Another great place to go for your revision is Hannah Kettle Maths. Every Thursday evening on TikTok, Hannah does a live where she goes through foundation and higher papers completely free for you. And I'm sure you already know the Maths Genie website. This is a great website to go to for resources, especially if you do Edexcel Maths. These resources are provided by very experienced teachers who have been examiners and heads of department. But when it comes to the TikTok user who promises to tell you all of the questions that are definitely going to be in the exam just for a small amount of money, I'd give that one a miss.